Hey guys, welcome to Downballot Roundup, where I introduce you to Democratic candidates running in local elections throughout the country. Today I'm here with Tom Cooke, who is running for Ohio State Senate to represent the 4th District. Tom, it is very nice to meet you. Thank you for coming on.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Excellent. All right. Why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Okay. So I was born and raised on Long Island, New York, and I'm the son of a cop. My father loved being a cop, which is probably where I got my community service bug. So I joined the Army at 18, did 4 years, got out, went to college on the GI Bill, decided to do another stint in the Army, did another 20 as an officer, and retired as a lieutenant colonel. Jumped right into federal service, did another 21 years there, retired in 2021, and wanted to get away from Northern Virginia, so I found a nice piece of property in Ohio. So I moved here in 2021 and looked around and didn't like the way the gerrymandered Republican Party was not paying attention to the will of the people. So I decided to get back involved in community service. I joined the local Kiwanis Club and I helped with the food bank and things like that, but I felt I could do more service if I got involved in local politics, which I couldn't do before because as a federal employee, I was bound by the Hatch Act. I wasn't allowed to do any partisan politics. But I looked around, so didn't like what I saw. As soon as I got to Ohio was when,
Right.
that's when the Dobbs decision came down. And I believe women have a complete right to take care of their own bodies. And Ohio was pretty hardcore about a 6-week abortion ban. So when the local Democratic Party was putting together a petition to ensure reproductive rights in the Ohio Constitution, I got involved. And I started, with petitions and knocking on doors and things like that to make sure women had the right to make their own decisions. And fortunately, Ohio passed that despite the Republican fight to stop it. And now the Constitution does have reproductive rights for women, which is very good. But then the legislators decided that they'd go ahead and say basically, oh, okay, so you have reproductive rights, but you don't have access to it because we're going to defund all of the clinics. And that's when I said enough is enough. So I looked around and I saw who my senator was that was representing me in Butler County, and I don't like his politics, so I decided to basically send him home. That's why I'm running for the Senate.
Excellent. All right. And can you tell me a little bit about District 4?
Sure. So District 4 is basically a combination of rural and a bedroom community for Cincinnati. So it's been traditionally red, but it's starting to turn purple. And the current incumbent is all business oriented, and they're not paying attention to the will of the people. This particular area, Ohio, still has a real problem with the opioid epidemic, and there's not enough funding to support mental health support for that. Ohio is 42nd in infant mortality, which is unbelievable because Ohio is not a third world country. So when I ask, I find it's because the mothers are not healthy. There's not enough money going into health clinics. So I said, look, we've got to look at this. We've also have a failing public school system. We've gone from an A to a C minus from the Department of Education, and it's because the public schools don't get the funding they need. And that's because Ohio is one of those countries that provides vouchers for people to send their kids to private or non-charter or parochial schools. And that's taxpayer money that's not going to the public schools. So I looked at that and I said, this has got to stop. I'm a product of public school education. I think I did pretty well. But in my own school district here, Oxford, Ohio, which is where I live, has Miami University. It's not a low-income area.
Right.
But they don't have enough money to get the kids to school. If you live within 2 miles of a elementary school, they can't provide a bus for you. And all of the high school kids have to drive to school because they don't have enough buses to send the high school kids to school. If they use the buses they have to get the kids up at 6 o'clock in the morning, or they get them home at like 5 at night. And there's money in Ohio to provide support for public education, but we're giving it to families to send the kids to non-charter schools. And I have no problem with private schools, but I don't want to have to pay for it with my taxpayer dollars. So those are some of the things I looked at, and which is why I'm running. Yeah, so Butler County is it's a great place to live. We've got farms here, we've got, great school districts, but it's got some challenges. And I don't think the local government is taking care of the people. So that's why I'm running.
What do you think is the number one piece of legislation you would like to work on to help the people of your district?
Okay, the number one thing that I would want to do is take some of the $4 billion that Ohio is sitting on in their rainy day fund and start opening some health clinics and also provide some more money for mental health support. I talk to mental health professionals, their caseload is grossly overworking them and they're not getting paid enough. So I would take some of that money and open up these clinics again. And I know that's a political issue because local Republicans don't want to fund, for example, Planned Parenthood. Well, that's just wrong. This is where people go to get the education they need on what to do when and if they become pregnant. And it's just not there. So that's the number one thing I would do. I would take some of the money Ohio is sitting on and send it down into the county so they can provide basic health care for people. I used to have an EMT license, and I used to ride the bus down in Southern Virginia where I used to live. And if somebody called for an ambulance, we just picked them up and took them to the hospital. And that was the end of it. But here in Ohio, if your house catches fire, the fire department doesn't send you a bill. If you call the police, they don't charge you for coming to your house. But if you have chest pains and you call 911 and an ambulance shows up, they're going to hit you for $1,000. So people are making a health decision on whether or not they can afford it. That's just wrong. You know, there's money available so that people, if they need health care, they can get it without worrying about the ability to pay. And that's one of the reasons why we've got this, huge infant mortality rate. People are afraid to go to the hospital because they can't afford it, or to see a doctor because they can't afford it. The money's there. We got to send some of the money back down instead of sitting on it.
Okay, so now give me one thing that you and your opponent differ on.
Okay, in general, so my partner has an A1 rating with the NRA and what they call the Buckeye Arms Association, Buckeye being, Ohio. He owns a company that provides liability insurance for people if they shoot someone. I think that's a conflict of interest. With the gun violence we have here, that's the number one issue we disagree on. I'm all for the Second Amendment, but I believe there has to be some regulation, and he's totally opposed to all of that. The other thing we're differing on is the fact that he's all about business. When you meet him, his first words out of his mouth, I'm all about business development. Well, I'm all about people. Take care of the people that live in the county. The slogan of my campaign is put the heart back into Ohio. One other thing I got to bring up is the fact that my opponent was the one that called for civil war if the Republicans lose in November. He introduced J.D. Vance at his Middletown, Ohio high school. And when he walked out on stage, that's what he said. He said, if the Republicans lose in November, I think it's going to take a civil war to get our country back. And I'm for civility, not civil war. That kind of rhetoric doesn't belong in the State House.
All right. Well, I got one last question for you, and this is a bit of a pivot, but I would like you to tell me something about your district that you really love.
I like the fact that it's an eclectic group of rural and suburban and professionals, because like I said, we have Miami University here. It's a polyglot of different types of people, and I really love that. Climate's not too bad. I like that too. But what I really like about the district is that people really do love Butler County, but they realize they have challenges and they're frustrated by the fact that when they vote for something, the people in Columbus ignore them. Does that answer your question? Yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Tom, thank you so much for taking the time to meet with me today. And I really appreciate it. And good luck with your campaign. I really hope to see you succeed. And thank you very much for running. I appreciate it.
Well, I appreciate it. My website is tomcooke with an E for Ohio.com. So that's where I am. You can see what I'm all about. So thank you.
Everybody go there. Yes, everybody go there. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.